Spread. This is just a big chuckle fest over here today. I'm Nesson.com's Mike Cole, joined once again as always by Ricky Doyle. Ricky, how are you?
I'm good. You all right? You had some spillage when we kicked this off?
No, I don't think we need to be mentioning what happened to my laptop. Now that it becomes a bit of
There were existing issues.
Yeah, exactly. By no fault of my own. My tea. I have my tea that kind of was moving stuff around.
Yeah.
I don't think anybody who knows, probably don't care either, who watches this program, if you look at the thing, it might look like we've got ample space here.
That's not the case.
No,
not the case at all.
So it's actually a miracle we don't spill stuff all over each other each week.
I gotta get a better, I gotta get a mug or something. I always get a bottle of water.
Honestly, too,
no free advertising.
Some product placement, too.
Yeah, it varies week to week though, so I give everybody a fair shot. But at the same time, I would like a customizable mug or something.
Good point. You don't want to upset our sponsors. And things like that.
That's the last thing I want to do.
The Spread, brought to you by us. So we're gonna do some sports betting stuff. We're gonna talk about the MLB trade deadline. Then we're gonna do some NFL. I think I just actually saw. One of the producers on it in the break room getting my tea, actually, and he said, "What are you guys talking about this week?"
And he poked a hole in your cup?
Yeah, he did. And I said, well, we're going to talk about the same thing. It feels like we've talked about for the last month and a half at this point. But this is, we're getting close to the NFL season. I just told you before we came in here, I was dialing up the EPA machine, and that's a sure sign.
Were you looking at week one at all?
It's in our midst.
Looking back to last year?
I was looking back to last year for some of the quarterback stuff that we're going to do.
Whoa, no spoilers.
We'll get to the quarterbacks. So it's just, it was like riding a bike. It was funny. I typed in the site, and it didn't recognize it. You know what I mean? Like, it was in your history. I was like, wow, it's been a while. So that's probably a sign that I haven't done enough off-season prep. But
hey, you've had more on your plate.
We're trying to. Actually, I almost divulged something that probably would have gotten me in trouble at work. So I'm learning as I get a little bit older. We've got a lot of other things that we're working on for ourselves and others. So, have you been watching the Olympics at all?
What's funny is for somebody who was grandstanding about the Olympics last week, I have not watched a lot of it.
You know what's funny for somebody who was very anti-Olympics?
You've been watching a lot.
I was like, Teddy, get out of the way! I'm trying to watch mountain biking. I had a
no. I mean, I've been coming and going. It's been more just. I mean, it is any year. I guess it's kind of just background noise. Yeah. But
I don't watch it at night, and I'm here during the day, and I don't. So,
I feel like we've had it kicking around the office though. We've had it on that TV.
Like, I saw yesterday that the Olympics are going on. The gymnastics were going on, I guess. It seems I'm so far behind it. I saw it on Nesson.com too.
Yeah.
That the gymnastics were going on. So it's there. I know that. So like that type of stuff, but like I caught myself on Saturday and Sunday morning watching the mountain biking, which I thought was actually kind of interesting. And then I got a little deeper into it. I guess there's some issues. The bicyclists, the cyclists, for both the street biking and mountain biking have issues with how the courses were prepared.
Interesting.
And then the mountain biking thing was like a man-made thing. That type of stuff I actually find kind of cool. Like with this specific event, is they're up on like this hill and like just outside of Paris or something. And I guess on a clear day you can see the Eiffel Tower, but it looks kind of like a hill type of thing that I grew up near. So it's just like, this is at least
relatable.
Yeah. So I watched that. The guy, the men's one was incredible stuff. The British guy who won, I think it was a British guy, English guy, whatever you want to call him, had to go basically have a pit stop early on because his bike came undone. His frame came undone. He fell way back.
Yeah.
And he came all the way back and then nudged the Frenchman on like the final lap. There was a little bit of contact coming around the bend.
Isn't it great that like you have that going on, but you also have like BMX style biking? So there's a lot of different things you can do with bikes.
Yeah, there is a lot.
You need a unicycle
do you
competition.
Have a bike?
I don't own a bike. No.
It feels like.
And every summer I kick around the idea of getting one.
Why would you? I don't know where you live. You live in.
I don't think I necessarily need one.
It
but
wouldn't work. I guess if you want to take it like to the beach,
no,
it'd be a doable
just really
thing.
like where I live. I don't necessarily have a need for a bike, but I don't know. I'd kind of like one, though.
I'm in the market for a bike.
Yeah?
Because I think it's a good way
Slap some pegs on it too.
Yeah, bikes are expensive though. I might as well just buy a new car and then just So,
but if I biked, it would be like, I don't know. I feel like I'd be biking in like a trail or something. I'm not going to be the guy that's in the bike lanes.
So
I have way too much anxiety, like navigating around bikers. I don't want the shoe to be on the other foot. I feel like I really can't handle that.
So where I live, it's back roads enough, and there are also bike paths nearby. So I would think I would take like
the big bike path.
Yeah, I would take like the back roads to the bike path and do that, just to make sure I wasn't getting in people's way. Because you can't, I curse those people as I try to pass them on like the back roads of friggin' Bedford, and it's like I can't be that person.
Yeah, you can't do that.
No.
Speaking of the Olympics, though, I actually was in a conversation with an old friend of the program, Andre Cacciatore, the other day about the pentathlon.
Old friend, I mean, he's brother.
Yeah,
really.
Brother in arms. You familiar with the pentathlon?
5 events.
5 events: fencing, shooting, swimming, running, and horseback riding.
That's
So I really ended up down a rabbit hole according to Britannica, which this then led me to. I started thinking like, I might invest in some hard copy encyclopedias.
I was gonna say, was Encarta down?
Yeah, I mean, read one a month or something, and just be very well versed by the end of the year. But basically, it was
Berlin
like
Wall still standing.
Events that they thought that 19th century cavalry soldiers should be able to master. So
that's an Olympic sport.
I think it is. Yeah, I don't know. The conversation's kind of all over the place.
Okay.
I don't know who's winning gold in that this year, but just something to keep on your radar. So once you get the bike, maybe start incorporating some of this other stuff. I don't know if you own a gun or anything, or if you own a horse that I don't know about, but maybe you just start to build this this treasure trove of things, and we could be seeing you in the Olympics in a few years.
That feels like probably your best opportunity to get to the Olympics, right? Like
I think they should have. This is what they should do with the Olympics or some other competition. Is like stack a bunch of these things. Like you get the pentathlon, but let's make it like 15 different events. And
then it wouldn't be the pentathlon.
No, I know, but I'm saying like let's add on to it, and let's figure out the best athlete in the world.
Yeah,
one person doing all these events.
This sounds like guts.
Hell yeah.
Global
I mean, we've been down that road before. So, yeah, Michael Malley,
please reach out to us.
If you're listening to this. Or Mo. We'll get Mo here.
Let's go to Mo. All right, let's talk about the MLB trade deadline. Came and went this past week. July 30th as opposed to July 31st. Is there a reason for that?
6 p.m. Eastern, too.
6 p.m.
So that was...
It's like baseball just continues. It's like, what do people know us for? Let's change it.
Did you get your pencils down tweet out there?
God, no, I didn't.
No.
I was about to make dinner at the.
I don't know if anybody did.
Well, it's like a tough time.
The way the deals were coming at the end, I don't know if anybody had time to put their pencils down.
Not to mention, like the 6 p.m. thing, not a thing to get hung up on, but like it makes no sense when you have like Alex Cora having his pregame press availability at like 4:30 with an hour and a half left to go. It's just a strange.
Yeah, and then on the flip side, you had, I know here locally, Craig Breslow spoke at like first pitch, basically.
Yeah, I saw messages flying fast and heavy that he's talking during
logistical nightmare.
Wolf. Yeah, more other people's problem than ours. Do you want to start with the Red Sox? Or you want to start MLB overall?
Let's start Red Sox, okay? Since we're just on them.
Grade their moves, vision, direction, playoff odds is what we have in our notes here.
Yeah.
What did you think of what the Red Sox did?
I thought their moves adequately suited where they're at in their competitive timeline.
Is that a good or a bad thing?
It's fine.
Okay.
It's a good thing. They picked a direction this year.
I was gonna say that is in my notes. Like Breslow did technically pick a lane,
and I'm kind of grading this on a curve too. I think getting the extension done with Alex Cora, like that in and of itself makes the straight deadline a win.
I mean, yeah. And like
that right there is
the grand totality of the organization. Yes, I think they didn't do a ton to help themselves this year, which is fine-ish. Like,
yeah, there were safe buyers.
Yeah,
they went out to dinner at a nice restaurant and they said everyone's drinking waters though.
Yeah, I guess that's a fair way of putting
it. But I think that's understandable because like they got to drive home at the end of the night. You want to continue like
they have great kids at home to worry about.
Yeah, they do.
These kids are going to grow up to be politicians, scientists.
They're not in the position of somebody like the Dodgers or the Orioles or the Yankees or teams that
are just looking.
They should be Ubering out for the night,
hammer faced.
Exactly. Yeah, I don't think the Red Sox are they're clearly not in that position. But I think they helped themselves, some nice pickups. So like if to go like I want to take a grading approach to this, I'd say C+, bump it up to a B- because of the core extension.
Fair. Yeah, I think that's probably exactly where that's just a much nicer way of putting it than maybe I was. Not that I'm against it, it's just it was very meh to me.
Sure.
I thought it was telling. MLB.com wrote a story like the 12 most significant or impactful trades, something along those lines. They did not have one of those, which I guess is to be expected. They kind of handled their business like they were one of those teams, though, if that makes sense. We'll get into the Dodgers a little bit. I like what the Dodgers did, despite the fact that they didn't go nuts. They did a move. All their moves were like moves you would make when you just need to tidy up around the edges. I think the Red Sox kind of did that. I do think this signifies, and I think even Alex Cora, maybe Breslow mentioned it, they feel good-ish about guys who are getting ready to come back or to debut in the case of Liam Hendricks, whether it's Tristan Casas. I mean, Chris Martin, I think, is supposed to throw a bullpen this week. Like I said, Hendricks, Casas. Those guys come back, add them into this, like a bullpen with what they just did, plus Martin and Hendricks. That makes a lot of sense. Casas gets back into the middle of the lineup. You technically upgraded the catcher position, which had been a bit of a black hole. Yeah, technically, it's there. Sure. I think they're kind of hurt by the fact that teams that they're jockeying for position with in the wild card race did a lot more than they did, or made more impactful deals than they did, I think, in my opinion at least. Like Seattle going out and getting Turner and Rosarena, I think, is kind of fits what they needed to do, and the Royals were busy as well. So I don't know, something to consider.
So I think in that regard they had to do something to improve. Otherwise, you're kind of waving the white flag, right? Like they needed to make moves to improve this year, and I think they did
worst
that
thing they could have
marginally,
done,
but they did it.
The worst thing they could have done was passively wave the white flag. If you're going to raise the white flag, run that thing up the flagpole like you're Mario and like fly it as you know, especially with the prices across the league. You look at like what the Padres had to give up.
Oh yeah,
well,
so that which actually kind of brings me to the one thing I do like that they did was they kind of trim some of the prospect fat. That's like guys that weren't.
Oh my God, Jesus! This is like one of the points I had. Like the
guys
that gave up
were Heimblum holdovers.
I mean,
Rule 5 eligible. Like we're probably on the same page because we talk about this a lot in the office. But like, it just felt like they had like beyond the top 3 or whatever, or maybe even 4 if you believe in Christian Campbell. But like, there was a point in the prospect rankings where it's just like a collection of guys, and it felt like they were compiling these over the years, and it's just like you look up and all of a sudden you have these roster decisions, the Rule 5 situation that you have to, like, that starts to come into play. So the fact that they were just like, all right, here's 4 guys that we don't envision being part of our future, give us a reliever that we think can help down the stretch. Like I like that approach. Like,
I agree. Heimblum,
if you don't believe in him, get rid of him.
Heimblum got ran out of town for a lot of unjustified, or with a lot of unjustified reasonings, complaints, griefs. One that I do think was legitimate was holding on to these sorts of
fringy prospects.
And you go back to a couple of those trades that might have been the last 2, the inability or unwillingness to part with a Rule 5 eligible guy, where you're going to have to make a hard decision on this player at some point.
Yeah.
So why not either, you probably should have done it in the offseason, but like use that to do what you need to do, which I thought the deal with the Angels was like a tough break for Worcester Red Sox season ticket holders, but and those guys are having some nice years down in Worcester, but what's that worth? So
the souvenir cups might have to be revamped a little bit.
Right, yeah. So I thought, that type of stuff makes a lot of sense for what they're trying to do in the short term and in the long term. They didn't have to part with anything up top. I don't think that they needed to. I thought I heard some things they were talking about the radio, like disappointment when it became obvious that Roman Anthony wasn't going anywhere. It's like, well, really the only thing out there was rentals. So, I mean, if you trade that guy for a rental, let's start calling for some heads. So that's kind of.
And I really like the trade with the Pirates from a Red Sox. I liked it from both sides. But I like it from a Red Sox standpoint, especially.
Considering what happened to the rest of across the league, I maybe tend to agree. Like, I thought using Nick York to get something that could help you this year would have probably been the route I would have gone. But I don't know if that was out there. So you're not going to trade the guy just to trade him.
I'm also not ruling out that could end up being the case.
Sure.
Like, it's got to take you're gonna have to smooth some things out and see how Quinn Priester adapts in Worcester. But like, it's on the table that he could contribute this year, and then obviously moving forward, it's kind of like last week we were again like just off air talking about like what kind of deal would you like to see. And I think it was like something like that, where you get a pitcher with a little bit of major league experience, or at least in the higher levels of the minors, about to debut, and approach it that way. Like, because now you can, if you truly believe in them and you truly believe that you can fix something and achieve some consistency, now you have a guy that's part of your pitching plans until, I think he's like through 2030 or
They've
something.
done enough in year one of the Breslow Bailey pitching infrastructure overhaul for me to give them the benefit of the doubt when they pick up a guy who doesn't have a great track record, where I can say maybe they see something in him. They just need to get their arms around him and they can help fix that. I don't know if it'll play out that way, and we could, talk to me 2 years from now if the pitching hasn't gotten a whole lot better. Then it's okay. Maybe this didn't work. It was just a small sample size. But for now, I'm buying what you're selling.
This is but this is ultimately this is what it comes down to with this trade deadline. Like, we can't be having this conversation again next season.
100%.
Like, this is I think we're being very rational and logical.
You only
with
get
like
so
these
many
moves.
of these deadlines in that position where it felt like every year under Bloom they were kind of in this.
If we're here again next year and you're hovering around 500 or like that 5 games above 500 sort of range, and you're bringing in the Lucas Simses of the world, the Luis Garcias of the world, and it's like, then you start to have bigger conversations of like, what are we doing here? But for where they are in this,
especially after,
I don't want to call it a rebuild, it's a building phase, renovations. It's fine. It's a fine trade deadline.
Yeah, I just don't know what else would have been out there for them to do to feel. I think they're probably gonna get hurt or killed by people who are like, they could have done more. Just got to get in, and if they don't, they're gonna look back at this and say, why didn't you do that? So you look around the league, and there was talk 2 or 3 days before. I think ESPN, Olney, and Passon did something where like the final thing was like, it was pretty clear nothing was gonna happen at the deadline, and the prices are gonna be way too high. So. Anything else from a Red Sox standpoint?
No. What did you think of the trade deadline in general? Like,
so
what is?
I'm really.
We're gonna remember this trade deadline.
I'm really nothing. I'm really trying not to be too negative, too old fart, too nostalgic, but
that would never be us.
No, I do think this trade deadline mirrored kind of the problem I have with sports in general and baseball
specifically.
It's everybody's too goddamn smart. And
this is what I had written down. One for the nerds.
Yeah, it's
this is totally a nerd deadline.
I was just I walked to
quantity over quality.
I walked to Target every day, and I was listening to a podcast. I wanted to make sure I wrote this down in my notes app. I was listening to the Baseball America podcast, and they mentioned that no top 100 prospect was traded for the first time since 2014 when they started paying attention to this. On average, every year there's 3.5 dealt at the deadline, and as many as 11 there was one year. So there's that. There was not even a big name rumor. Like, say what you will about Jack Flaherty, Jazz Chisholm, or Tanner Scott. Those guys don't move the needle for me at all. I could not get into this deadline at all because there was no Max Scherzer of 5 years ago, like when it felt like those guys
were latching on to like the Tarek Skubal stuff, which is like never going to happen anyways.
I mean, the Garrett Crochet comes out and says, I'm not pitching in the playoffs. I was like, well, there goes that. And it's like, that's the same thing. It's the same idea, right? It's this, I don't want to say money ball because that's unfair to Billy Beane at this point. It's just this, well, everything's quantified. And again, I understand it. It makes sense. But like, I look at it as like, okay, if I'm a GM or a president of baseball ops for a team that is in contention, like legitimately in contention, if everyone's going to sit on their hands, let's go. Like, let's, you know what I mean? I just, are we all just playing for like the 2028 World Series every, like, you know what I mean?
That's the thing. It's like every team is, rather than going out and making some sizable move that is going to swing the pendulum, either making you like the prohibitive World Series favorite or making you from on the outside looking into a legitimate contender. It's like everybody's looking for that slightest little edge. Like you're looking for like relievers, utility players, innings eaters, like guys that can bump your playoff odds a couple of ticks without necessarily costing you, the prospect capital that it's going to take to get a quote unquote star.
Right.
So it's just like you said, like if it's just such a numbers game, and it's the other thing about this too. It's like not only is it just a quantity over quality thing where just these middling relievers are changing teams.
Yeah.
It's like so many of these relievers are guys that you look at their raw numbers and they're not even that great. So it's like just teams trying to find like specific splits or underlying metrics that portend better results. So it's just like my eyes glaze over.
Yeah.
And because I'm like, I don't know who the hell this guy is, but there's got to be a reason they want him.
It turns into
and it's super team specific.
It turns into the very definition of paralysis by analysis too, then, doesn't it? Like
club control is another thing. Like
looking,
the contractual thing is bigger than the talent a lot of times.
There's always going to be one number that points to this being a good deal, but then there's going to be 5 that say you shouldn't, and you're like, well, can't deny the 5, even if the 1 is exactly what we need this year. So, yeah, I mean...
So there were 34 players traded Tuesday.
Yeah.
20 of them relievers. And so this brings me to another thing, is like, there are no real bats getting traded anymore. Like, it's all relievers, or in some cases you get starters, and even then it's kind of like second-tier rentals. You don't see many impact hitters.
Yeah, let's
go
not
anywhere
fall
anymore.
do you want to talk about doing things a year from now? If you and I, well, I mean, if we're still sitting here talking a year from now, maybe we should rethink some things. But if we're sitting here going over the odds, our guy Josh Barton sends the odds for, whatever the Vladimir Guerrero Jr. equivalent is. Let's just agree to slap
Luis
each other
Robert
in the
will
face.
probably be.
Right? Yeah. Like, come on, there weren't even. This is what I'm saying too with the big names thing. Like, those guys weren't even. Has anybody come out today and written something saying these are the closest deals that didn't happen, and it involves somebody like that? I don't even think that exists. So it's just none of it. It sucks.
Yeah.
Randy Johnson got traded at the deadline one year. It's just like, it's insane. Mike Piazza got traded.
Yeah, but that was also when everybody was acting like the modern day San Diego Padres, and that they were just willing to trade minor leaguers like it was nothing.
I also understand it. Like, I don't want to sit here and say, like, again, I just don't want to come off as everything used to be better back in the day. But I do think maybe we went a little too far the other way.
Yeah.
Like, what was the last bad trade that a team got absolutely murdered over? Like, who's lost a job at the trade deadline?
No, not necessarily. So I don't know if So this is one thing I wanted to mention. So, like, because we, again, talked about this the other day, but, like, there was that trade that the Royals made. Was it last year?
Yeah, I think it was.
In trading Aroldis Chapman for Cole Reagans.
Yeah.
And so, like, in looking at that trade from just, like, a strategic standpoint, like, why aren't more teams operating in the offseason with, like, leveraging their financial resources in the offseason with an eye towards the trade deadline? Like, I feel like some teams do, but, like, why weren't more teams in on a Jack Flaherty, who signed for 1 year and $14 million with the Tigers?
I guess if you believe the Yankees, medicals might have been an issue there.
Well, no, I'm saying before the season.
Oh, I see.
Like,
right. Yes.
Obviously, he was a bounce back candidate. Like, he's coming off. Like, his stock was down.
That is something the Red Sox feels like they've tried to do recently, whether it's Bloom or Breslow. Yeah.
Right? Like, I mean, if you sign a guy like that, 1 year, $14 million, and all of a sudden you're holding the hottest ticket at the trade deadline, if he ends up pitching up to his talent, I mean, because, again, like, you're buying low on the asset, but still, like, now they flip him for pieces that could be part of the long-term solution. So, like, if I'm a team like the Red Sox, or, I think Kansas City kind of did this past offseason, where, like, they took a flyer on some starting pitches that they could potentially flip at the trade deadline. The thing with them is they ended up being a lot better than probably most anticipated. So, I don't know. It's just one of these things where, like, the Flaherty thing really jumped out to me. I'm like, if I was a team looking to, just sort of, like, expedite my rebuild, it's like, guy like that. Like maybe you stumble into something, or maybe you have a trade chip.
Like too often because of the parity, because of the expanded playoffs, those teams aren't always sellers. So like they're like, well, now we're kind of stuck in between. Like with the Red Sox, like Tyler O'Neill would have been the best bat traded if they wanted to do that. So, looking across the league, I don't know if anything really changed. Do you? We can do this real quick before we move on. In terms of like World Series bets, odds, Dodgers are 3-1, the Phillies 5-1, the Yankees are plus 550, the Orioles 6-1, Braves 11-1, Astros 13-1. I don't think anything. Typically, like the trade deadline doesn't really move those markets anyway, but. Do you refocus at all? I think the Dodgers are the worthy favorite. I think for me, I'd look at the Phillies. Could they have done a little bit more? I don't know. That team's pretty loaded. I like what the Dodgers did by the Flaherty thing is okay, whatever, but like getting Edman, Rosario, Kovac, Kiermaier, like would have been a great deadline like 3 years ago. But I think those are exactly what I was talking about earlier on the margins for an elite team.
Yeah. But they also, like, those guys that they acquired, like, I feel like they went out and plugged some holes that they needed to plug.
Yeah.
Like, I feel like more so than maybe in trade deadlines past, like, they made moves out of necessity rather than luxury.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of versatility on that team now. For them, like, ultimately, the Dodgers' ceiling is probably going to be dependent on what happens with the guys in their rotation already.
Yeah.
I mean, there's a lot of question marks there, but if everybody's healthy, they're as good as anybody. I don't know, like, most of the contenders, I liked what they did. Obviously, the team that sort of jumps out just from like all right, this is it, is the Padres.
The Padres, yeah.
Like, I mean, we talked about this 3-4 weeks ago when we were making our midseason like futures bets, and one of mine was the Padres to reach the NLCS, which was plus 750 at the time. It's now down to plus 550. But basically, that was. The idea behind that was that they were going to have this last stand. Like, A.J. Preller is trying to save his job, it appears, and is willing to empty the war chest in order to make that happen. It is interesting, though, not only in the fact that they're one of the few teams that is willing to give up such high-level prospects and really just go for it, but, like, they're kind of pivoting from, over the past few years, this, like, star power, just build a mega team approach to now all of a sudden they're like, all right, let's try something different. Let's build a lights-out bullpen instead. And get these guys who maybe you don't necessarily know, but, hey, if we get a four-headed monster to shorten these games a bit in October, then we'll win that way. So they're, like, changing their philosophy on the fly. Who the hell knows whether it's going to work or not, but
they are the perfect.
Dig it.
they are the kind of like the perfect team to do that, where it's like, if they get in, and then they're like, oh, yeah, that's a roster of guys I know. It's like,
but they're another team, though, that a lot of it's going to depend on what happens internally. Like if Joe Musgrove comes back and is good, and Yu Darvish, like if he ultimately rejoins the rotation. It's same with like now I'm looking at the Orioles, like they immediately call up Jackson Holiday. Like that could be one of the biggest additions of the deadline is if he takes off down the stretch. So
yeah, I don't have a whole lot to add. It's just it was a day.
Nothing really like to your point though, like from an odd standpoint or just like pecking order, nobody really leapfrogged anybody. Nope. It was all just like
status quo,
shoring up weaknesses or perceived weaknesses on these contenders, and
which
see
again
what happens.
Probably makes sense. It's probably the prudent thing to do, but like I said earlier, we're all just too smart now, and it just kind of takes away some of the fun.
Yep.
All right, let's get in the NFL. You want to start with these this ESPN ranking of the top 50 most impactful offseason moves?
I don't even really know where we want to go with NFL stuff.
Yeah, so I kind of dug into that. The ESPN made that list. I think it's just a good time. You know, we kind of did a check-in last week with campus starting. Here comes Bill Belichick. I think this week we're kind of moving on to things that have happened. Talking about, you were kind of refining everything. Like, oh yeah, that guy went there. And which I think is what the ESPN thing really helps in figuring out. I don't really know what they were going for necessarily, but so the most impactful offseason moves, according to them, was Kirk Cousins signing with the Atlanta Falcons, and then Caleb Williams being drafted by the Bears, Jaden Daniels drafted by the Commanders, Marvin Harrison drafted by the Cardinals, and Tyron Smith signed by the Jets. Those are the top five. You can get into whatever, do it on your own time. Any takes? What's your biggest offseason move? How do you feel about
this NFL newcomer impact index? If you want to, if you will, I don't know. That's what it says on the side. So I don't know if I necessarily
hate-
like this exercise of like
I hate mixing
sprinkling in
draft and
Yeah.
trades.
It
and free
feels like
agency,
we're operating in two different
it's completely different
realms.
Yeah, I agree.
So
All right, so let's move on.
So back to baseball. Yeah. So when I was like perusing this list, I kind of just like wrote off the draft ones, right? Like,
So
I want to look at off-season moves that were actually off-season moves with NFL talent.
I went two
not guys
directions
coming in
here.
the league.
I looked at this list and I said I picked my number one for 2024, and I picked my number one for 2024 and beyond, and subconsciously didn't use any of the rookie quarterbacks.
Okay.
So for
A
2020
lot of qualifiers.
I know. Just
Let me
for
adjust my filters.
But
yeah.
just for 2024, I think the Eagles signing Saquon Barkley is the biggest offseason move because I think he's got a little bit of gas left in the tank. Not sure how much, not sure how that's going to age, not sure how he's going to age. But I look at that team and say there is a need there. I think he helps everything else around him. And I think in the ESPN article specifically, they kind of made it an allusion or a comparison to Christian McCaffrey with the Niners, the Niners. if that is the case, then this is a slam dunk. You take him away from a division rival, whatever, the Giants suck. If he has anything left, putting him in that offense with Jalen Hurts and AJ Brown and what they have around those guys with a defense that's about to take the next step, fairly innovative coaching staff,
Yeah.
I think that could end up being, just for this year, the most impactful.
More impactful than Kirk Cousins going to Atlanta?
Yeah, because I am out on Kirk Cousins.
Wow. See, I like the
So I guess
but the
the
Cousins thing
NFC
has the
South
potential.
being a disaster zone is
I also just don't know if you're gonna see a Kirk Cousins hit free agency again, or like when that's going to happen.
Is he healthy?
I mean, I don't know.
You haven't looked at the
I haven't.
medicals yet?
Yeah, that's the Yankees. They
haven't
seem
put
to
him in the
have a
tube?
strong
Yeah.
opinion on everybody's medicals. But like the way quarterbacks are signing these new deals, though, it's. I mean, it's rare that a quarterback of that caliber, whatever it is you think of him, like
Yeah.
he's fine. Like he's better than.
Yeah.
He's at least league average, probably way better than league average. But like you know what I mean, like
Yeah.
a legitimate guy, a legitimate quarterback, reaching free agency, like it just doesn't happen. Like this is the weird predicament that these teams are. This is how you end up with Jared Goff making $3 billion or whatever it is. It's like you don't want to be stuck in. You don't want to be stuck without a quarterback. So.
Okay, but like, how does that manifest itself this year then? Like,
I mean, the Falcons had probably bottom 3 quarterback play last year,
probably, yeah.
and now all of a sudden you get a guy who at his best is a top 12 quarterback.
At the very least, we're going to learn a lot about the Falcons this year,
Yeah.
right? We're going to learn a lot about Kyle Pitts.
And
we're
I
going to
say
learn a
that
lot about
as-
Drake London.
I think you and I are probably on the same page with the Falcons because I'm a little lower on them than most as well, largely because I don't know what that defense.
I'm just not high on anyone in that division.
Yeah, but I don't know. I just think adding a legitimate quarterback is big.
Thoughts? Question mark. Our picks.
But-
I didn't know we were just going to go with the ESPN rankings. So
Well, I think that's the most impactful.
what do you got at
I think
number
it's gotta
2,
be
Caleb
by-
Williams?
I think it's got to be by default, right?
yeah,
No, I think there are some defensive moves that you can make a case for. I think Carlton Davis going to Detroit.
it's just those are great moves. I just don't know how much the
See, you know-
defense impacts.
My only thing with the Saquon thing too is I don't know. Maybe I'm a DeAndre Swift apologist.
As one
And then
is.
I just I don't know what's the gap there. What's the gap there?
I think if he's healthy, which is probably a big if, and
Yeah.
if he can stay healthy, which is an even bigger if, I think he's still top 3, 4, 5 running back who could change a game if you use him the right way.
Yeah, I just don't know about running backs, man.
That's what I said. It's a short term thing, like for now.
Yeah.
If you want to go, long term, 2024 and beyond. Again, none of the quarterbacks. They could all be great, but
Yeah.
that's such a crapshoot. And you know,
Oh yeah. It's also to have Caleb Williams, who's considered like a generational prospect, number 1 pick in the draft, to just be like, yeah, it's an impactful. Like,
Right.
yeah, obviously,
yeah,
that has the
right, that
potential to
too.
be impactful.
So when we're talking about, we're 4 years from now, we're talking about that 2028 World Series everyone's been chasing. I think we're gonna look back at this list and be Marvin Harrison Jr. was the most impactful trade or a move.
Sure.
Because I think, can he be Justin Jefferson? Can he be Tyreek Hill? Can he be AJ Brown? maybe, like I said, maybe one of the quarterbacks becomes a generational talent, but I think Harrison has a chance to best significantly impact his team's roster and opponents' game planning for like the longest time and most consistently.
Yeah.
So I think he's going to age best of all these offseason moves, assuming one of these quarterbacks doesn't turn into Peyton Manning or Tom Brady. So
yeah, I mean, there are a few like interesting defensive moves that are just like see if it changes like what a defense looks like. Like I don't know, like Houston, like Danielle Hunter, like get him across from Will Anderson, like maybe all of a sudden we're talking about a different element of that team.
L'Jarius Sneed for the Titans.
Sneed, yeah,
like he's
trendy pick there. The Titans have, they've certainly made some moves that they could turn things around pretty quickly.
Patrick Queen, even if you want to. It's just, yeah. There's some of the stuff I need to dig into. It's like, oh yeah, that's right. Yeah, I mean Russell Wilson, Calvin Ridley's a Titan now, and Marquise Brown is a Chief. So
a lot happened.
Let's get into the quarterbacks before we get out of here. Some big quarterback news over the weekend. Tua Tagovailoa signs a deal for $1 billion, and then Jordan Love signs a contract for $1.1 billion.
Yeah.
Those guys got paid. I think we're gonna be on the same page.
Everybody's
here.
getting paid.
Yeah. Dan Patrick made this point too. He's talking about Patrick Mahomes saying like $45 million a year for him is the biggest bargain in the league at this point, as these guys get paid more and more. I think we're both going to be on the same page here. Which of these contracts do you think ages better, Love or Tagovailoa?
I think Jordan Love, and
I think it's like the more I think about it, it's like no duh.
Yeah, and it's not even because of how high you and I think are on Jordan Love and have been for a little bit. Like I think a lot of Tua's success is predicated on what is around him, or just, and I don't even mean that as a knock, but just like what Miami has built is just, I feel like that's why he's thriving, and he is thriving to his credit. But like, I don't know, if things go south, they fire Mike McDaniel in 2 years. What's Tua going to be at that point? Like in a different looking offense. Like I have worries about that. I'm a little less worried when it comes to Jordan Love. Like I think the raw talent, from a raw talent standpoint, I think that there's more to work with there.
I understand why the Dolphins probably felt like they needed to do this. The more I think about it, the more I think it's a bad deal for a lot of the reasons that you mentioned. I understand that the alternative is to find a quarterback who fits the system as well as Tua does, and I will give him credit. Like when he's healthy, he gets the ball in the hands of very good playmakers. We've seen this in the past, and maybe the cap goes up and things change and whatever. Maybe I don't know. The cap is crap. It can be maneuvered. Blah, blah, blah. Does this keep them from being able to re-sign Jalen Waddle down the road? Does it keep them from, say we want about running backs, Achane. Like, does it keep them, is there something, do they have to cut Tyreek Hill at some point?
Yeah.
And like, all of a sudden, you take away those things that make him valuable, and I think we're kind of saying the same thing, just in different ways, and now all of a sudden it's like, well, his contract is getting in the way of what makes him valuable to this roster as it's currently.
So what would be the impact, you think, if you were just to swap those two quarterbacks? You put Jordan Love on the Dolphins, you put the Tua on the Packers. Like, what happens?
Oh man, that's a good question. The Dolphins instantly become an even bigger Super Bowl contender, and I do have questions about Jordan Love's accuracy, but like he has played in that system basically. LaFleur and McDaniel are similar. I think the Packers get leapfrogged by a handful of teams in the NFC because
that's the answer, right? Like that.
Yeah, that's a good point.
That's a good exercise.
Because,
like,
but like I
one's better
think
than the other.
I don't think it's. I don't think it is slightly apples and oranges because like Tua goes to Green Bay, now he's got to play in Wisconsin 8 times a year. There's the cold weather stuff, so like you know what I mean.
Sure,
he fits well in Miami because of that. But yeah, you think about it, and it's. I do think it would take Jordan Love some time, a little bit, but I just go look at that offense that Jordan Love turned in the best EPA after Thanksgiving among quarterbacks outside of Brock Purdy. Those guys could end up being very good. None of them were high draft picks for the most, Whereas Tyreek Hill, Jalen Waddle, just on their own, it's like that's a completely different sport.
The other, it's sort of the elephant in the room, I guess, is health. Like,
yeah,
I mean that honestly scares me a little bit with Tua because
the comp is unfair, sort of, to Tua, because it's like we don't know about Jordan Love. It's been one season,
right?
But yes,
but
all we can go on is what we know right now, right?
You know, every time he hits the ground, you hold your breath. So
you start dealing with brains. It's
not
touchy
good.
subject.
Not good. So
also put some respect on Matt LaFleur's name. Like, sure. He's done more than Mike McDaniel has. I understand that he had Aaron Rodgers, but I think that's a weird thing that kind of just lingers in all of this, is that maybe it's just, these guys both system quarterbacks, but I don't want to take away from Love either. It's just it's an interesting dynamic when you're trying to do that calculus.
So now the next up, right? It's Dak Prescott is the guy that now he's got to figure out his new deal. It was
smart of these two teams to make this deal when they did, because
Brock Purdy is another one. We've sort of touched on that in the past, but Brock Purdy's a classic example of the guy's he's gonna get in the $40-something million probably, and it's just because the alternative is you don't give him that money, and then you're kind of stuck back in that weird quarterback purgatory.
Where did he rank on
which is
ESPN?
Funny for a team that at one point had 3 different quarterbacks who were all competing, and they gave up all that draft capital and whatever. So
ESPN did their top 10. Brock Purdy didn't even make the top 10, so you're gonna pay that guy that kind of money. Then again, Jordan Love didn't make the list, nor did Tua Tagovailoa. So that kind of talks, economics of the NFL.
In the whole thing with Dak, I believe it's in his contract that he can't get franchise tagged after this season. So
it's good agenting.
Basically, Dallas has to find a deal with him, or he hits the. So when I raise that question of who's the next Kirk Cousins to come along in that sort of tier of quarterbacks who could hit the open market. All right, there's the obvious one. I just don't see the Cowboys letting him get to that point. Although they got a lot they got to figure out.
I know. It's not a good situation. That's like we were talking about that last week with the Belichick thing. The more I think about it, I wouldn't necessarily be into that if I was Belichick, unless you can tell me I can come in this year to a 7-2 team or something and try to take them over now. Yeah. I don't know what you want to do. The ESPN. We don't need to go through the ESPN top 10 quarterback ranking.
No, I was gonna say I feel like I don't know how much time we have, because I feel like we could do a whole episode on ranking quarterbacks. maybe we should.
Well,
we should do that next week.
You and I need to huddle up, no pun intended, at some point to kind of plan out what we want to do for NFL preview. I think we're going to kind of try to do that over the course
place to start, though.
The next few weeks leading up to the season. So
I also really wanted to dive into quarterbacks, the most valuable quarterbacks against the spread.
Do you want to do that right now?
I don't know if we have time. We're going to be. I think we're going to be cutting it close here. So
we'll run through it real quick, and then we had another idea that we're going to get to in terms of guys that we fear against the spread. But I lost the link to it. We got 2 minutes. So we'll do it next week. What about
Judon? You want to talk about Matthew Judon?
What about him?
We talked off-season moves. This is not necessarily an off-season move, but he could get traded. That could be an impact play right there.
Yeah, that's the kind of move that
moves the needle,
really
right? If you go to, I'm trying to think of a landing spot. What if he goes to Detroit? I don't know. Goes give them a little pass rush opposite Aiden Hutchinson.
Jacksonville.
You don't really play this with any team.
We always just Houston, that type of any of these.
But so I guess the real question is, what do the Patriots do with him?
They gotta trade him.
You have to trade him, right?
You can't pay him because what's the point? And you can't keep him because he's being a dick. That thing the other day was surreal. It's this is a new regime. This is not your father's Patriots. This is this is not your Patriots. This is they're having squabbles about contracts in the middle of Foxborough. Guys, take it up the road to the Red Wing or whatever.
It's interesting because it's so the decision they make with him has the potential to impact a lot. Obviously on the field because he's a really good player, but just this year more it's about building culture, right?
Yeah.
So it's do you value building a culture that I mean, you might win 1 or 2 more games if you have Matthew Judon in that defense.
Yeah.
But do you value the messaging more? Like, because to your point, like if you go ahead and you give him whatever deal that he wants, like then you're sending the message of all you got to do is bitch and moan and you're going to get what you want. So would you rather win a couple more games and get the winning culture side
From where
of
they are
thing,
right now in this rebuild, they
draw a line in the sand?
You
Like,
got to draw a line in the sand.
I think I'm with you on that. But it's kind of this is a little bit of a dilemma they're facing in the early going.
Yeah, it's a nice, and it's, he realizes things are changing. Might as well give it a shot. Try it out. Yeah, I don't blame him necessarily, but I probably would have went about it slightly different.
Yeah, but nice piece for whoever gets him. It's a nice little piece to add late in the before the preseason or whenever it goes down.
You know who has no idea how to draw a line in the sand?
Who's that?
You and I.
No, that's let's get out of here.
That's it for the spread this week.
Should we wrap?
That's Ricky. I'm Mike. We're gonna go get a wrap. Have some lunch. It's been fun. Let's do it again next week. Goodbye.
See you guys. Adios.